Greetings and welcome to What the Fringe, the podcast dedicated to all things Fringe theater. I'm your host, Lauren Hanson. Each week, I visit with a Fringe artist to hear all about their endeavors and gain insight into their process. This week, I'm visiting with Jon Bennett, whose latest production is Americant. Americant is the latest hilarious, unfiltered, and unexpectedly moving show from Jon Bennett, the internationally acclaimed comedian and master storyteller behind Fire in the Meth Lab and Pretending Things Are a Cock. Stranded in the United States as the world shut down, Bennett found himself navigating the absurdity of pandemic-era America before being forced back to his childhood home in rural South Australia. Back to his conservative, religious, and profoundly eccentric family. After over a year trapped in a small town isolation with them, he finally made his way back to the U.S., only to be arrested upon arrival. A fast-paced, laugh-out-loud, and occasionally heart-wrenching tale of chaos, culture shock, and familial dysfunction. Americant is storytelling at its most raw, ridiculous, and utterly unforgettable.
I've been touring the rest of the time and still performing and stuff and doing all of that, and was all ready to do the Canadian tour and had 4 festivals that is pretty much like 2/3 of my entire yearly income is doing these festivals. And the week before I was to go to Edmonton, my immigration lawyer was just like, I don't think it's a good idea right now for you to leave, even though like I have my green card, I have everything that is needed, but if they want to be pricks, they can do that. And at the moment, they're doing that. So he was like, it's not worth the risk of potentially, when you come back into the country, that could be a real issue. And there's a lot of articles, there's a lot of things, if you look it up, there's a lot of citizens are being deported, you know? So it's kind of like, it's probably not worth going through that.
Jon Bennett is a world-renowned comedian, storyteller, and 7-time Just for Laughs award nominee. Known for his ability to blend humor with deeply personal stories, Jon has carved a unique space in the world of comedy, and after 20 years in the business, he's recognized as one of the most prolific storyteller comedians touring today. Jon, welcome to What the Fringe!
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here. People all the time are making recommendations for who should be on the podcast. Your name's come up before. And we were supposed to perform in Edmonton together. And then due to complications, we'll say, which we will get into later, you were unable to attend. And I was like, I really think it's important to have Jon on the podcast. I try to keep things really positive just for artists and fringe artists. Things are really hard as a fringe artist. And just, you know, creating a positive space. But there's a lot of malarkey happening right now. And I think it's important to talk about it and to talk about your experience. So we will get into that. But before we do, let's just talk about you as an artist. So my first question is, how did you realize you were a storyteller?
Well, I started doing stand-up when I was 19 years old in Adelaide, South Australia, which is the second biggest fringe in the world. So I grew up doing the Fringe or knowing about the Fringe. And the whole story is I did stand up for a fairly long time, like maybe 5 or 6 years. I moved to Melbourne to try and sort of make it in Australia. And I was doing pretty well. I was doing a lot of the clubs and stuff, but mainly like you're the middle person. And in one of my shows, this guy came up to me and was like, you just did someone else's joke. And I was like, oh, God, did I? Whose joke was it? And he was like, it's actually the headliners. And I was like, okay, I guess I should talk to him. And I talked to him and he was like, you know, it's obviously just train of thought. Like it's a different thing, but the joke is kind of the same. And it was a dumb joke that, you know, I came up with as a 23-year-old, you know, whatever. Then I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess the little trigger in your brain goes. And I was like, well, I guess if my brain is doing that and I can't be authentic in stand-up, what is a thing that I can do where that you can avoid that ever happening? And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, well, I'll just talk about real things that happened to me. And that's how the sort of storytelling stuff became. Because if someone has a similar or the same story as you, that's amazing. So that's how that all began. And then I was asked to help run a storytelling night in Melbourne, which was so cool. This guy, he had an armchair on wheels with a little overhead lamp and a little ashtray, and we would wheel the armchair around to different little bars and stuff, and then once you turn the lamp on, the stories have started. So we started like doing it in the corners of bars and stuff, and then it kind of took off from there and became like a regular kind of thing. So that's how the storytelling all kind of started. Then I went traveling and made a show and did all of that sort of thing.
Oh, I love that. Well, you started touring with your storytelling or with the rolling armchair?
Originally, the first shows I did, I had a child's little armchair and I would bring that around with me. I was doing that, and then I did a bit of like television in Melbourne, and we wrote a bunch of shows and like proper community type TV. So no censorship, but also no money. And we sort of got this free reign to do whatever we wanted. And it was so fun. And then I had a bit of a Saturn's return, you could call it, where I had a house with my girlfriend and I had a little freak out and I broke up with her and I sold the house. And then I went traveling for a year and a half, just thought I would just see the world as much as I can. And that is where I started pretending things are a cock thing. So one of my mates is a photographer, Alexander J.E. Bradley. He wrote to me while I was traveling and was like, do you want to make this a thing? And I was like, okay, I guess so. And so he came over and we traveled all around South America and took a bunch of pretend cock photos and started posting them online. And then it became a viral thing on those sort of golden ages of Facebook. Then I turned that. I had an art gallery of pretending things were a cock at the Adelaide Fringe, wanted me to do it. And so I blew up all the pictures and framed them and had this quite amazing art gallery. And then I started doing the stories behind the cocks. So that's how that started. And then I started using projection and I turned pretending things are a cock into a show. And that's how that all began.
Wow. And it's a book.
There's a book and a calendar and, you know, all the things.
You with pretend cocks in December and February.
Yeah.
That's great. And you still are up to those antics, taking photos all the time?
The main joke of it, or the best thing about anything like that, is just commitment. Commitment to the joke is all you want. And so I kind of can't stop. Because it's even funnier that I've been doing it for like 14 years now. And I don't do the show anymore unless someone pays me enough money. So I did that show for a few years. And then I've got 10 different shows that I started doing. And they're all sort of multimedia storytelling comedy shows. But over COVID, I decided to give Pretending Things Are a Cock the show to only non-male performers. So I've like franchised it out to only non-male performers in a sign of equity. And I just thought it was really stupid to do. So we've had a few festivals now where I haven't performed it and a female, either comedian or whoever wants to do it, I just give it to them and they get all the pictures, they get all the stories, and they can just do whatever they want with it.
That's really fun. What got you into adding multimedia into all of your work? I'm assuming it started with that show, and how has that like kind of progressed over the years?
I started using it for that, and then I realized it's a really good cheat. It's basically having your set list on stage with you. I don't write any of my shows. I don't write them down because I have a much more visual memory, and I studied film a lot and that sort of thing, so I use it as like a storyboard, and it's just adds another element, especially when you're touring a lot and you can't have a set. I think using projection sort of gives you that set, and it's a tourable thing. So I have nightmares that my projector breaks and I don't know what's happening. So I'd be terrified to do a show by myself without that.
You can take your laptop or your phone up and just show the audience, just be like, okay, here's the picture. Everybody take a look.
That's happened before. The power went out one year when I was doing Pretending Things Are a Cock in Adelaide in a tent. All the power went out, so I gave all the audience members the book, and we just did a live reading of the book, and they all lit me with their phones. It was really cool.
That is super fun. And did they all buy the books afterwards? You made extra cash.
No, they'd already read it. There was no mystery anymore. So they were just like, oh.
Shouldn't it be like a coffee table book?
Yeah. No, I did sell a fair few that year, but yeah.
People come over and are like, what is this strange book you have on your coffee table?
Well, I've had a few of those. I stayed at an Airbnb in New York a fair few years ago now. And it was when Airbnb where you just stay in their spare room type thing. And this guy was an acrobat, I think, in a big show in New York. And he came up to me and he's like, you seem really familiar, and couldn't work it out. And then he was like, oh my God, and went and got the book out of his bookshelf. This is a random Airbnb in New York City. So I was like, wow, I don't know how you got that.
That's the best. And then he was like, I'm sitting among royalty right now.
No, I don't think. I think he was like, my friend bought this for me.
I keep it hidden on the bookshelf.
Yeah, it was not out. It was well in the bookshelf. Yeah.
That's great. Well, what do you love about Fringe? What keeps you coming back to Fringe? Because you've done so much.
I think I'm closing in on a few of the big knobs. Minnesota Fringe that I just finished was my 158th festival. And I think the thing I liked about it was I fell in love with the lifestyle more than anything of just, you can just travel around doing these festivals. And the one thing that you can control is like doing a good show, basically. Then you don't have to live anywhere. So I spent 15 years just traveling, and you stay with locals. You can get away with not paying rent, bills. So you just have this nomadic lifestyle. And I remember I did maybe my second year of doing Montreal or somewhere like that, where a big veteran Fringe performer, Jem Rolls, who is the loveliest, weirdest, people say he's a curmudgeon. I don't think he is. He's so sweet and lovely. He came up to me and he was the one who was like, you can do this. You can just do it. And you can tour and do shows. And then when it stops, you just go live in a very cheap country for a couple of months, and then you do it all again. So he was the one who talked me into it. And then he didn't even know that I could then come back to Australia and do our festival season, like comedy festivals as well. So you can do the summer in Australia, then the summer in North America. So you just do it year round.
That's not too bad of a gig, right? You get to see all the fun places in the world and make a living talking about pretend cocks.
Yeah, it was during that time that Jem was just like, you could do this, and talked me into it. And that's how that all began. So it was more the lifestyle of just hanging out with a bunch of freaks and weirdos. And I've done a lot of comedy festivals, and I used to get booked for a lot of music festivals even as like just something else during that time. And you do the music festival, do the comedy festivals. It's a little bit competitive, whereas Fringe is not that. Fringe is like, you're all just a bunch of weirdos trying to do your weird stuff.
I think that's a great way to explain that. I love the Fringe community. I think when I started, my background's in theater, not stand-up, but I was expecting it to be competitive or run into those things you kind of traditionally run into. And I just haven't really run into that.
No, there's none of that. I mean, there's always a bit of that sort of stuff, but not to the extent, because you're all doing very unique things. So that's not there. And the camaraderie and the community is just amazing. Everyone's so lovely and supportive, and comes and you all go see each other's shows. There's that as well. So I really liked that part of it.
It's really beautiful. And I love talking to artists and get to know artists. And I just think Fringe performers are some of the most gifted and talented people on the planet. They just happen to be at Fringe shows. That just happens to be where they are. But I'm always just so amazed at what people do, what they come up with, and just how dedicated they are to their art. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, and just commitment to whatever they are doing. Like I feel like Fringe is exactly what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be not your usual thing. That's how Fringe started, is they had a theater festival, and then they were like, well, we're too weird or odd, or why isn't my show getting accepted? And so they just started their own festival. So there's that whole rebellious part of it as well.
I love that. Okay, so you've been over 100 and what'd you say?
158.
Okay. Give us the dish. What's the best festival and why?
They all have a different little spot, but my favorite is Victoria, which is on right now.
What do you love about that?
You're on an island. I like performing. Performing is fun, but it's kind of my job. And my favorite thing in the world is getting out into nature and seeing animals. So in Victoria or Vancouver Island, there's bears, there's moose, there's whales. I do the whale tour every year. It's a little tiny festival that I think I've done like 8 times. You don't have to do any of the marketing because I've hardly ever not had a sold out show in Victoria. So you don't have to do any of the stuff. You still get to do your shows, but you get to just hang out and go see animals and go whale watching, which is my favorite thing to do.
That sounds great. I love creating community and being with the artists. I struggled with that in Edmonton this year, but that is one of my most favorite things to do.
I'm always up for the external adventures more so than just the festival. And I think I learned that pretty early on as well. Like one year in Winnipeg, we went tubing down the river for the whole day. And that was one Victoria that's written into their rules now where I did go whale watching and we were seeing so many whales that they kept us out there and I was late for my show. She's a performer now, Holly Brinkman. She was my tech and it was us, her and I and a few others out there. And so the tech and the artist were late for the show. And now in their like rules before the festivals, they're like, please don't do anything extracurricular before your shows if it's going to run into the time. And then it's got Holly's and my name in brackets. It's the John and Holly rules. Yeah, we were running to the theater, still like all salty and gross, and just ran straight onto the stage, and I had to set up, and we made it. We did make it.
Did you have to set up your projector?
Yep. While all the audience just watched me, and while I was doing it, I was just like, oh, we went whale watching. I didn't know what was going on.
They got an extra story out of it, so.
Oh, they loved it. Of course they loved it. They love it when you're real.
Yeah, absolutely. Who hasn't been late to their work before?
Exactly, right?
That's great. What can people expect from you as a storyteller, like from a Jon Bennett show?
Usually I talk about real experiences, so it's always a character or something like that. And I try and make it as weird and silly. So that's what using projection and stuff helps with that. When you're telling a sort of more normal story, the pictures can make it a bit absurd or something like that. All of my shows are sort of storytelling. So I've got Pretending Things Are a Cock, which is pictures of me making cocks around the world, but it's actually a story about traveling. So the whole deal with that is people come in thinking it's going to be like puppetry of the penis type thing. And then it's actually quite a nice show. And it's about friendship and this sort of stuff and traveling and meeting people from other countries. And so the whole thing with that is they come in for one thing and then it's something else. And I guess all of my shows have a bit of that where I don't want it to be what's expected.
That's great. Well, let's talk a little bit about Americant. We read a little bit about it. You developed this kind of stories from COVID and then getting arrested, which sounds par for the course of what's about to happen with what's going on right now. So tell me a little bit more about this. What can you share without ruining the whole show?
That show has a lot of like spoilers to it. It's got a reveal at the end that I can't really give away, but it is about living in America when COVID hit. I was touring. And it's got a little bit of the meaning of home because, like I said, I didn't have a home for 15 years. Like I just toured and traveled, and then COVID hit. I was stuck in America, and everyone was telling me to go home, and I was like, I don't have a home. And all the flights were canceled, all the tours were canceled, as we know, all theater was canceled. So I was kind of stuck, and I couldn't go home because there were no flights, and Australia was being very strict with everything. I ended up overstaying my visa until I could finally get a flight home. And then it's about going back to my family, who I haven't really hung out with for years, and being sort of stuck in Australia, which I hadn't really been for years. And I'd gone there for festivals, but not back on my parents' farm, and my family doesn't really know what I do. I mean, they understand it, but they don't. This isn't their thing. So sort of going back with my family and navigating those relationships. And then, like a lot of people, just getting really sick of not having anything. And also being told, I think artists as well, being told that we're not allowed to do our thing is a real clash of identities. And you're like, well, who am I then if I can't do the thing that I'm supposed to do, and I'm not an essential worker, so I guess I can't, my job isn't essential. And so I got really depressed, and then decided to come back to America. Then, of course, put all my money and effort into doing that. I got a residency at a comedy club in Portland, flew in, and they stopped me for overstaying my visa. And I was like, it was COVID. COVID happened. I couldn't, literally no flights.
Right. I mean, Australia was shut down.
Yeah. And they didn't care because that's the kind of people they are, where they're like, doesn't matter, you should have left. And I was like, it was impossible. So then they detained me for 9 hours and questioned me. And, they go through all your personal things and we're going to lock me up and do a bunch of that stuff. And this is in the Biden government. So that was during that. And then, without giving much away, I mean, it doesn't really matter, I got married. I married an American. So it's sort of about that relationship as well.
Yeah. Wow. So now you're here. You get to be here because you've got an American.
Now I'm here and I'm not allowed to bloody leave.
Yeah. Okay. So what's going on with that? Can you talk about that a little bit more? I mean, I am a white suburban girl from Texas, so I admit that I sit on whatever throne we sit on in Texas. But I don't understand. Can you explain to me, like, what's happening? What's going on?
I've been touring the rest of the time and still performing and stuff and doing all of that, and was all ready to do the Canadian tour and had 4 festivals that is pretty much like 2/3 of my entire yearly income is doing these festivals. And the week before I was to go to Edmonton, my immigration lawyer was just like, I don't think it's a good idea right now for you to leave, even though, like, I have my green card, I have everything that is needed, but if they want to be pricks, they can do that. And at the moment, they're doing that. So he was like, it's not worth the risk of potentially, when you come back into the country, that could be a real issue. And there's a lot of articles, there's a lot of things, if you look it up, there's a lot of citizens are being deported, So it's kind of like, it's probably not worth going through that.
Yeah. Well, given the stupid history, right, that would flag when you come back in, would they send you to Australia?
Who knows? That's the whole not knowing of any of it which is kind of what they're wanting to do, is create uncertainty and fear and scare you. And I mean, I guess they're doing it. So they are creating fear and uncertainty, and well done, they've won. So I had to cancel my whole tour.
That breaks my heart for you.
Yeah, it's the same deal. That was my home. That's my livelihood, is going to these festivals that I've been going to for 15 years now. And it's that same thing of being told you can't do something which should be fine. And even the lawyer was like that. He's like, you're probably fine, but you just never know. And the thing is, I do have a life here in America. I've got a wife, I've got a home, we've got cats, we've got these things. And, that would be horrible to tear someone away from their family, which they've been doing. So it's like, okay.
Yeah, it's been happening. It's just, I mean, I have heard horror stories. There are terrible, terrible things that are happening.
Yeah, but the horror stories are also news. So that was the other argument. And I'm a bit rebellious with this stuff anyway, where I was like, no, I'm going. And then he kind of really put the fear into me, and I talked to my partner about it, and we were just like, ugh, maybe just not this year. And it's just really disappointing. But as you know, because I've been doing this for so long and have a lot of friends in the Fringe, Murray, the Edmonton producer, called me, and he's like, he was really sorry and just as upset as I was. And he was like, you know what if we just try and do it anyway. And beautiful Murray. Like, then I think he got focused on it for like a week, where he's like, here's what we're going to do. And like,
that's very much a Murray thing. Yeah.
Yeah. He was like, every day is going to be a roast of Jon Bennett. And I was like, I don't really want that to happen. But all of my friends ended up filling in for my spots in the festival. And we did it as a fundraiser for a law firm here in Portland that provides free legal advice for people affected by the ICE raids and immigrants and this sort of thing. So it was really nice that everyone decided to do little bits. And yeah, we did like a cabaret. We did a cabaret called Canna Don't, because we've had Americant, so we did Canna Don't, which was pretty funny.
I know I didn't get to see it, but of course I heard all the hubbub of people doing the show, and they were really honored to be able to support you in that way. They were all very, very excited.
Yeah, I was really touched by it. I did not expect. When Murray said it, I was like, no one's going to want to do this, Murray. And then he sort of rallied around and was like, yeah, don't worry. And then we put it out there, and we ended up having too many people.
I was like, yes, they are. You are selling yourself short on that one. Everybody wants to do it. Well, and especially I think patrons too, when they hear what's happened, I think that kind of spurs patrons on to want to come even more, right? When they start to understand what happened, what the funds are going to, it makes it a really beautiful partnership.
I think that is the thing with the Fringe as well, is that the patrons also feel like they're part of that community too, which I think is, like we were saying, is a bit separate from other forms of theater and this sort of thing. Is the patrons feel like they know you. That's how you be successful in Fringe festivals, is just to be a regular person. It's like catching up with your old friends every year, and for the audience members as well. So that's really a lovely part of it.
Yeah. That's great. I meant to ask you this before we got on. Is there a place that people can give still if they would like to give to this fund that was created, or do you have one to suggest and I can put that in the show notes?
It's called the PIRC. I'm using my phone, so I can't look it up, but I'll text it to you.
Yeah, you can send that to me and I'll make sure I put it in the show notes so that people can still give to that if they weren't able to come to the Canna Don't show.
Yeah, that would be really lovely. Yeah, because we did a fundraiser for them here in Portland as well, and they're a lovely group who are very needed during this time.
Great. Well, and people in America can still book you, though.
Yes, true. So I do have a bunch of gigs coming up, and a few of my friends also just immediately booked me into stuff. And yeah, as disappointing as it is that I won't get to go to my favorite Fringe in Victoria, I won't get to do Vancouver or Edmonton or these ones.
No whale watching.
I know, it's upsetting. It's real. We have it here. We do have some off the coast here at Depot Bay. We've been twice. My wife saw her first whale, and we saw it real close, and she responded with, oh, they just look like giant slugs, which infuriated me. They're not slugs. They're giant mammals under the ocean. That's just the way she does things.
Oh, that's delightful. Did she say it because that's what she thought, or just to rub you the wrong way?
Who knows? Probably a bit of both, I would say.
I like her already.
Yeah. And so the Americant show has a lot of stuff about Gina in it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, here's hoping that things get better. God, I don't know. It's like hard to even.
It's hard to think about it, isn't it? It's like, all right.
It's hard to think about it. I'm in Texas and there's some real wackadoo things happening here. So I'm real thankful for the folks that are standing up right now and trying to do the right thing, which is happening. There's a lot of that happening here. And so I'm, I have hope that things will get better.
Yeah, I think I do too. And I just think any day there's going to be something, and we keep holding on to something will happen, and you'll be like, well, this has got to be it. Oh, no, we're still doing it. Okay.
This is what we have to hold on to. We have to. And as artists, we have to, right? We understand it. Well, let's switch gears just a little bit, and we'll go to my last question to end on hopefully a happy note. What has been your most interesting or awkward Fringe interaction you've ever had? Some little fun anecdotal story from your 15 years of touring.
It was in Montreal. Montreal was my first international Fringe. So That was the first one I did. I had no idea about anything. I just heard of Montreal. And Montreal is known as the party fringe. And, this was millions of years ago. So people who are listening might not know, but most festivals set you up with locals to live with. And I got set up. I was doing Pretending Things Are a Cock. And I got set up with a lovely couple, Remy and Xavier, in the gay village in Montreal, who thought that, this is going to be a really raunchy show, and then were bitterly disappointed. But they became really good friends of mine, and before one show, it was near the end, I was very tired, I was in the bathroom, and I found this bottle of pills. I still remember they were called Frenzy, and I thought they were like guarana or, something like that. So I took 2 of them and I was like, okay, that'll at least give me a bit of energy for my show. And I did my show and I got about halfway through and I looked at the audience and said, is my jaw moving a lot? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, oh, I think I've taken ecstasy. And I was like, I don't know what's going on. And I freaked out. And the audience they didn't mind. They were like, yeah, you're doing it. And they like cheered me on and everything. I did the whole show holding my face. And I went for an hour and a half. It was the last show of the night, so it wasn't anything like that. And they loved it. They loved it so much. Because, of course, as I would love to see that, And then I told them the story as well. I took these pills called Frenzy. I thought they were like guarana or something like that. And then I finally asked my billets, and they were like, well, they're not. It's not ecstasy. It's a legal drug, or it was legal, but it's like 20 years old from New Zealand. And they're like, we don't even know how long. No one's ever taken those pills. What are you doing? And I just thought there were things. Anyway, that's the craziest thing that's happened. There's been so many weird little things that have happened over the years. There's been some ones that are much less tame. Yeah, lots of billet stories, lots of stories about people who we're staying with who you just get set up with, and yeah.
Oh my gosh. Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, Jon, it has been really fun to have you on the podcast today. Talk about fun things, talk about hard things, and just get to know you a little bit better. It's been so great. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. To learn more about Jon, visit his website, jonbennettcomedy.com, and keep up with him on Instagram at Jon Bennett Comedy and at Pretending Things Are a Cock. There's a special way to spell that because the first account was shut down, but you can see all of that in the show notes. And then in Facebook, you can keep up with Jon at Jon Bennett Comedian, and on TikTok at Jon without an H Bennett. What the Fringe is produced and hosted by me, Lauren Hantz. This episode was edited by Ben Ellis of Renowned Media, and those sweet tunes you hear are provided by Paul Snyder of Orchestra of Sound, and our logo was designed by Ruby Arnold of Ruby Makes Things. What the Fringe can be found on your favorite podcast platforms and now on YouTube. Be sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay in the know when new episodes release. Keep up with What the Fringe on Instagram at whatthefringe_productions and find us online at whatthefringeproductions.com. Everyone hates to hustle their show, pass out flyers, talk to people in line, make a best friend at a show. But you know what? It does pay off, even if you feel like a goofball. Just remember.
The main joke of it, or the best thing about anything like that, is just commitment. Commitment to the joke is all you want.